Hello, welcome to another episode of As Days of Noah. My name is Ludnie, and today we're going to be talking about the commandments of God, which we know from the Bible was written by the fingers of God. Now, from reading the Bible and studying the Bible, we learn that the commandments of God are a representation of his character. Now, how do we know his character? How do we know that exactly? So in Exodus 34, Moses asked God to show him his glory. And God responded with the attributes of his character by stating that he's compassionate, gracious, abundant in goodness and in truth. So from that, we know that those are the characters of God. And in 1 John, it tells us that God is love. So if God is love and the Ten Commandments are a representation and a reflection of his character, then we know that those Ten Commandments are love. The commandments of love. So the commandments we're going to be looking at today specifically is the eighth commandment, which is found in Exodus 20, verse 15, which basically states that thou shalt not steal. Okay, now the Webster Dictionary defines stealing as taking something from someone else, wrongfully taking something that belongs to someone else. Now, if you're wrongfully taking something that belongs to someone else, we already know that that has nothing to do with love. That is not love at all. Because that thing that you may have taken from that person without their permission could have been something that is very dear to that person. So from doing that, we know that that would impact that person in a negative way. And as we know, God commanded us to love our brothers and our sisters. In Matthew 22 exactly, it states, it talks about the time when one of the Pharisees asked Jesus, Lord, what is the greatest commandment of all? And Jesus responded by stating that we shall love the Lord our God with all of our hearts, all of our minds, and all of our souls. And he continued by stating that the second is like unto the first, that we should love our brothers as ourselves. Now, if we love our brothers as we love ourselves, then we wouldn't want to do anything to hurt our brothers. We wouldn't want to do anything that would cause them to have grief or in any way. So if we're stealing from our brothers, if we're causing them harm, that just shows that the love of God is not within us. We are not developing the character of God. Now, going back to stealing does not necessarily have to be taking someone's property or taking anything materialistic from someone else. It has to do with other things as well. And one of those things, it could be that you're stealing someone's time from them by wasting their time. That would be stealing their time. Or you may be stealing their dignity from them by belittling them, but making them feel less than. Or it could be even as far as stealing someone's affections, right? So we have some young men who at times would ask, or they would have a willingness or a desire to date a young woman, but yet they know that they have no intentions, absolutely no intentions of actually marrying that young woman, that young lady, or no intentions of doing right by that young lady. And so that young lady, in ignorance, may develop an affection towards them. But yet, because that young man had no intention, that in itself would hurt that young lady because they have stolen the affection from her, which did not belong to them in the first place. And we have seen other aspects where a young man may want to even marry that young woman, or even before courting or before dating, they directly go and speak to that young lady, but yet they've never took the time to consult God about it, to ask God for his will. Ask God, is it okay for me to date your child? Is it okay for me to go ahead and ask for her hand in marriage? They never take the time to do that. And that in itself is stealing the affection of that young woman. That in itself is stealing something that does not belong to you. Because if you think about it, who does the young woman belong to? She belongs to God. So before you ask for her hand in marriage, before you approach her parents to court her, or before you approach her and speak to her, you would want to ask the person whom she belongs to, which is God. So in all, we're saying that if we are to love one another, if we are to have the will of God be manifested, the character of God be manifested within our lives and the way that we live, we would want to show that by loving one another, by caring for one another. And by doing that, we will be expressing, and others will be seeing God through us, through our actions. Also, we also must remember that we cannot keep the commandments of our own selves. We have to elicit the help of God. We have to ask for God's will to be manifested in our lives. We have to ask for the presence of God to abide with us, to be within us, because without God, there is no way that we can keep his commandments. Absolutely no way. If we think of when Jesus walked the earth, we know that all of what he did, he relied on God, on his Father in heaven to do it. All of the things, all of the miracles that he worked was through his Father. And so we ought to do the same. And we have to remember that if we are going to do anything, if we want to keep the commandments of God, if we are claiming that we love God, we have to ask for his help, for him to put his love in our hearts. And the way that we show that we love God is by keeping his commandments. The way that we show that we love God is by loving our brothers and our sisters as we love ourselves. And remember that there is absolutely nothing that we can do without God helping us to do it. Without God, it is impossible to do anything in this life. So just remember to seek God first and ask him to help us in even the little things, to help us keep his commandments and abide by his will. Thank you.